Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're doing something that I am so excited about because I've never done it before. But I saw the lovely Jessie from Bow Ties and Books do this video yesterday at the time of filming, and I knew I had to do it immediately. So this is the mid-year book freakout tag 2021. And what's going to happen is there are 14 questions. I'm going to quick fire answer all of them. Well, maybe not so quick. You know what I'm like when I start talking about books. But I'm going to answer all of them, and you can find out a little bit about my reading so far this year, what I want to read in future, what I'm excited about. I actually haven't read as many books as I thought I would this year. I'm in a little bit of a reading rut at the minute, and I mean as in the past couple of weeks or so, that I can't settle on one book. But I'm hoping that by going through the books I've really enjoyed so far, it should motivate me or remind me of the things I've been enjoying. So anyway, that's enough introduction. Let's get into the questions. So we start with question 1, and it's a big one. Number 1, the best book you've read this year. This wasn't hard. It is without doubt, I've talked about this before, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I'd never read anything by T.J. Klune before, and I'm not a massive fan of fantasy, but this had just enough tie to realism, magical realism, the contemporary world, to balance the fantastical elements, and I just loved it. I fell absolutely head over heels in love with the two main protagonists, Linus Baker and Arthur Parnassus, and it's just so lovely. I would also say, if you want to read this, read it now. It's definitely a summertime book because it's mostly set at the seaside or on this island in the beautiful ocean, the Cerulean Sea. So yes, this is a perfect summer read, and it will make you feel all of the best feelings. I just adored it. I can't recommend it enough. It's fantastic. Question 2 is the best sequel you've read so far in 2021. And I don't have an answer for this. I have read a sequel, but I didn't enjoy it. But we're going to talk about that later. Question 3, a new release you haven't read yet but want to. Okay, this is an exciting one. So I got sent a copy of this by Bloomsbury for free, so thank you so much Bloomsbury in exchange for a review. So I am going to review it, but I haven't read it yet. It is No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. It sounds really interesting. So this is about influencer culture. So it's about a woman who's really famous on the internet. She's viral, and then her personal life starts to fall apart. And I think it's about the contrast between living online and living in real life. And as someone who produces online content, even though it's a very tiny corner of the internet, I still hope I'll be able to relate to this a bit. I did try to start this one, but it's told in a really fragmented way, almost like verses. You can kind of see there on the page, it's very broken up, and it almost seems like a collection of thoughts rather than one start to finish linear narrative, which could be interesting. It might be a reflection of the short fragmented nature of the internet and our short attention spans. But yes, I'm very curious to dip into that one. I think I need to be in the right mood because I tried the audiobook, and due to the fragmented nature I just found it too confusing, so I might need to actually sit down and read this one. So thank you again Bloomsbury for sending me a copy. Question 4 is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. There's a big one. This year, not very long now, there is the third and final instalment in the Simon Snow trilogy, Any Way the Wind Blows by Rainbow Rowell. I am beyond excited for this. I loved book 1. It's one of my favourite books of all time, and one of the few books that I've reread. I don't very often reread books because I have this funny complex about wanting to read as many different books as possible. But if I really love a book, sometimes I will reread it. And this is one that I've already reread. I want to reread it again. I actually didn't like the second one. Apart from Baz's headscarf, which was iconic, and those who have read it will understand, I thought the second one was a bit of a letdown. I'm sorry, Rainbow. She'll never see this. but I love the characters so much. So I am just so excited for the third one. If you like Harry Potter, but you want something more safe and inclusive and accepting and just a wonderful place to be, definitely read those books. I cannot wait for the third one, and I really hope it's not a disappointment. I'm so nervous. I'm going to be reading it with my friend Marty, who you will have seen in my most recent vlog, and we actually bonded over those books. It was the very first thing we talked about and found out we had in common. So I feel like there's a lot riding on it. And then the second book that I'm really looking forward to is Gold Diggers by Sanjina Sathian. I hope I'm saying that right. I believe she is a debut author. Okay, so I had to get my phone because I couldn't remember what it was about. But let me tell you. Neil Narayan is authentic, funny and smart. He just doesn't share the same drive as everyone around him. His perfect older sister is headed to Duke. His parents' expectations of him are just as high. Neil just wants his neighbour across the cul-de-sac, Anita. But Anita has a secret. She and her mother Anjali have been brewing an ancient alchemical potion from stolen gold that harnesses the ambition of the jewellery's original owner. Anjali's own mother in Bombay didn't waste the precious potion on her daughter, favouring her sons instead. Anita, on the other hand, just needs a little boost to get into Harvard. But when Neil, who needs a whole lot more, joins in the plot, events spiral into tragedy. Gold Diggers is a fine-grained, profoundly intelligent and bitingly funny investigation into the questions of identity and coming of age. Oh, it just sounds so cool. It sounds so cool. So we've essentially got magic powers and witches in an Indian American coming of age story. I literally can't wait to read it. It sounds amazing, and I've got really high hopes for this one. I just think the concept sounds so original and interesting, so I really, really hope it doesn't disappoint. Hello everyone! God, I look exhausted. Since filming this video, 2 more books have been announced, 2 releases, and I am so excited for them that I couldn't make this video and not mention them quickly. So the first one is called Pony, and it's a brand new release by R.J. Palacio, who is of course the author of Wonder and the Wonder books. Wonder is one of my favourite books of all time. It made me cry. I love it so much. I also really loved her graphic novel, which was also based on Wonder and those characters, but this sounds like it's a completely new story, so I'm really excited for that. I have requested a proof copy from the publisher, so we'll see if I'm lucky enough to get one, but I really want to read it. And then the second book, and probably the one that I'm most excited about after Anyway the Wind Blows, is Poison for Breakfast by Lemony Snicket. It's a brand new Lemony Snicket book. I am so excited. I only read A Series of Unfortunate Events and All the Wrong Questions, I think about a year ago or 2 years ago, because my mum wouldn't let me read them when I was growing up because she said they were too scary. And I loved them so much. I wish I'd read them when I was younger. They are so funny. They're really clever. I love his writing style. And he's written other books as Daniel Hadler. I think that's his name, or Handler. But he hasn't written any others that I haven't read as Lemony Snicket, so I am so excited for this. I've pre-ordered a signed copy. I literally can't wait, and I couldn't make the video without mentioning it. So pre-order it now if you like Lemony Snicket, because I don't think very many people know that this is coming out, but I found out about it from his Instagram. So I can't wait for that one. I am beyond excited for it. Question 5 is your biggest disappointment. And this is one that I really didn't expect, and I actually feel quite bad about it because I just love the author so much. I've charted her career since the very beginning. I read everything she writes. I still really love her work. And I'm also sad because these particular books are soon to be a Netflix adaptation, and I'm really excited about it, but now I feel very conflicted as well. So this was actually probably my most hyped release for the start of the year. It's Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman, and this is of course from the series of graphic novels Heartstopper, which I love, but this volume just wasn't for me. So it's quite a personal reason why. I don't want to go into it in too much depth, but if you're interested, I did write a full review on Goodreads. You can find my account down below in the handy links section. But essentially, and I'm just going to say a quick trigger warning, I'll put a timer down below where you can skip if you wouldn't like to hear it. But this book touches on eating disorders. Someone in my very, very close family had a very severe eating disorder that was very nearly fatal, and it was very traumatic, and the depiction of the eating disorder in this book just made my skin crawl a little bit. And I'm sure it must have been beta read, it must have been tested with audiences, but what Charlie goes through in this book in terms of events is very similar to what my family member went through, and yet it felt so inauthentic. He has a staggering amount of self-awareness that I just can't see ever being real. He sounded more like a narrator trying to steer a succinct, neatly packaged plot than someone actually in the throes of mental illness. Of course, this might be based on Alice's own experiences, in which case I don't want to invalidate that at all. But for me, the depiction of an ED in this felt more like an NHS booklet, like what is an eating disorder, how can you help, rather than an actual real person. It felt very much on the surface level, and I do understand that might be necessary for the size of the book, the audience, but this series went from something that was just really happy and safe and lovely into something that made me feel really sad and very conflicted, and I just didn't feel it was an accurate representation at all. Of course, that's my own personal view. Other people might think this is a perfect representation, but I would just bear it in mind, because obviously people might not be expecting a representation like that. So it's just worth bearing in mind. On a lighter note, I did get a signed copy, and Alice did a little drawing of Nick in there, which I absolutely love. But yeah, it just made me a bit sad and a bit frustrated. So moving on from that one. Then we have question 6, which is the biggest surprise, and I have 2. I couldn't narrow it down. There were 2 books that really pleasantly surprised me that I read this year that I just don't think enough people are talking about, because neither of them are new releases, but I hadn't heard of either of them before. So the first one, I have literally searched my entire room and I can't find the book anywhere, which is so annoying, so I'll have to insert a little picture here, but it's The World According to Garp by John Irving. I loved this book. I really wasn't expecting to, because I heard it had themes of sexual abuse of some sort, although I don't know if I'd entirely class it as that. So I went into it with a bit of trepidation, but it was such a fantastic story. I would say if you want a story to believe in and characters that you will 100% believe are real, this is the one. I literally fell into it like Alice in Wonderland. It is so good. So it's about Jenny, who is a feminist in a time when feminists aren't really a thing. It's the end of World War II and she's a nurse, and she knows that she wants to be a mother, but she doesn't want a man. She's not interested in having a relationship, and so she devises a plan, and without spoiling too much, she ends up having a son, and his name is Garp, and you'll find out why in the book. But you essentially follow their lives all the way through, all of the events that happen to them. Both of them are writers, so it's really interesting as someone who sort of considers myself a writer to read about writers as well. It's just brilliant. I can't quite explain what happens because obviously it's chartering lives, so it's not as simple as like a save the cat structure. But there are some twists in this book that blew my tiny mind. I was actually sat there gasping because I couldn't believe the twists. It's so good. I genuinely can't recommend it enough, but I would say it's best to go into it without knowing very much about it, because it's a very difficult book to label. If you want some pure escapism, but you're not such a fan of fantasy or magic, this is brilliant. Really recommend it. And then the second one that was a surprise, which I just loved, is this. It's Keep the Aspidistra Flying by George Orwell. This is the edition that I have, which is from the 80s. I absolutely love it. I got it for £1.50 in a charity shop and I love it. I read this book because Ariel Bissett recommended it in one of her videos, and I posted a picture and she actually got in touch with me to tell me how much she liked this edition. I also love it. I love the font, but this book is fantastic. So without being too much of a cliche, I love George Orwell and I genuinely do love him. Not everything about him, he was known to be a bit of a womaniser, but I just think his writing is electric. I can't get enough of it. I'm trying to savour it because obviously there aren't any new books coming out. It's quite the sad thing about authors dying, but I had never heard of this one until Ariel recommended it. And I have to say, I think it's up there with my new favourites. I just fell in love with it. So my two favourite Orwell books previously were 1984 and Animal Farm. I really loved both of them. I studied Animal Farm and then I read 1984 off the back of it because I liked it so much. This book is completely different. It's about this man called Gordon Comstock, and the best way I can describe him is, if you've ever read the Adrian Mole books, he's very much like an older version of Adrian Mole. He's very cynical, he's very assured of his own intelligence, he's very self-interested, but he decides that he hates capitalism. He dubs it the money god, and he says that everyone's just working for the money god. And he decides that he, Gordon Comstock, can live his life without capitalism, without money, and he can just step out of the system. And it's all about how horribly wrong it goes. It is just brilliant. And a little insider fact that I loved about this was there's a scene in this book, and I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, where Gordon ends up in a jail cell. I won't tell you how it happens. But George Orwell got himself in a position where he was arrested so that he could write that scene. And I understand that's a very privileged, straight white man thing to be able to do, but it did mean that the scene was really authentic, to the point that I was thinking, has he actually been to jail? And then I found out he had. So I really recommend... Well, this is a 1982 edition, so it is falling apart a little bit. I'll hold it carefully, but I really loved it. I really recommend it. It's also really funny. It's really relatable, especially if you kind of resent capitalism. Don't we all? Apart from maybe the people who are benefiting from it. But it's really good. I had so much fun reading it. The audiobook is fantastic as well. Definitely recommend. Loved that one. Question 7 is a favourite new author. And I have two, and neither of them are new authors, but they're new to me. So the first one is Brit Bennett. Brit Bennett, of course, wrote The Vanishing Half, which I absolutely adored. I loved that book. It's about two sisters who are twins and they could both pass as either black or white, and one of them lives their life as a black woman and one of them lives their life as a white woman. And it is so interesting. The characters are so believable. I'm definitely going to read The Mothers. I already have it, which is Brit Bennett's other book. And yes, I just loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I loved the way she writes. It's like a breath of fresh air. And then the second author is Kazuo Ishiguro, who of course wrote Clara and the Sun. I have bought several of his books, which I intend to read. I just love the way he writes. It's so easy to understand and so simplistic and yet so profound as well. So yes, I can't wait to read more of his work. They're sat on my shelf looking at me now, sort of looming, saying read me. So I need to do that soon. Then we have question 8, which is your newest fictional crush. And this is quite hard because at the moment, what with Loki being on Disney Plus, I have to say my attractions are very much centred in one direction. I don't have much space in my head at the moment to be thinking about taking up new attractions. I have loved Loki since I was 13 and I am just obsessed with that show. I might need to do a whole Loki themed video at some point. And so, of course, I picked Neil Gaiman, Norse Mythology, which I read this year. And you might be saying, Anna, that's not a new crush. That's a 7-year crush. I hear you, I hear you, I hear you, I do. I hear you loud and clear. But this is the first time I've read about Loki in his original form, in his Norse form, and it was really funny. It's quite tragic as well, like the ending was really depressing. I'm not going to spoil it, but it left me feeling really sad, but that's not Neil's fault. That's obviously the original Norse myths because he tells them just as they were told. But I loved the depiction of Loki in this. I particularly liked hearing about his antics with a horse, particularly attractive horse. Not to me, to Loki. You need to read it to understand. But I already knew about that story, but I'd never heard a retelling. So that was really entertaining. And it's so funny to hear what he gets up to with Thor, although he's not Thor's brother in this. And I did miss that dynamic, but it's still a really good book. It's really well told. The audiobook is sublime. As always, Neil Gaiman, I've talked about this before, is the god of audiobooks. So yes, that one is another really good one, and it definitely satisfied my needs. Question 9 is your newest favourite character. And this one was easy. So it's Nina Reaver from Taylor Jenkins Reid's new book, Malibu Rising. I adored this book. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. She's one of my favourite authors. And I just related to Nina so much. If you want to hear my full thoughts, I actually did a live stream with Jemima Rose, my friend. If you didn't catch it, I'll put the link below. But we had so much fun talking about this book. And I just adored it. I really loved Nina. I related to her so much. She was a brilliant female protagonist. I don't always connect with female protagonists, but I definitely did with Nina. Oh, it was just such a good book. The perfect read for summer as well. If you want something summery, this is the one to go for. This and House in the Cerulean Sea are perfect. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. Now, I don't very often cry at books, but these two, I can't remember if I actually cried or if I was on the verge of crying or like doing that sort of weird no tears crying. But both of them made me very emotional. The first one is, of course, The House in the Cerulean Sea. It made me cry because it was so beautiful and I was so happy at the end. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it was just such a lovely book. But I've talked enough about that one. And then the second one is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, again by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is beautiful. It is literally fantastic. I loved it. I fell in love with the characters. It's so believable. This edition's particularly floppy. These are actually 2 very floppy books, both with the same bestseller yellow strip, because I think they're both American editions. If you enjoyed Taylor's other book, Daisy Jones and the Six, you'll definitely love this one. I'd also recommend this one to fans of La La Land, The Great Gatsby. It's a perfect depiction of wealth and glamour in Hollywood and the American dream sort of element in there. Living life to the full and being able to splash out with money and the effect that that has on human beings. It's also got some beautiful intimate portraits of people at their lowest and highest moments, some fantastic intimate beautiful relationships. Oh, it's just brilliant. I just adored it. I loved it. I think everyone should read it. So yeah, that one was a hit. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and I am so excited to talk about this one. This is Grandad's Camper, and it's a picture book released by Anderson Press, who are famous for things like Elmer, and I just love it. It's by my friend Harry Woodgate, who is such a phenomenally talented illustrator. Like, it's actually a little bit ridiculous how talented they are. But this book is just so beautiful. It has such a lovely feel to it in terms of how it's been printed, and it is so gorgeous inside. It's about a granddaughter who goes to her granddad's house, and he tells her all about the adventures that he had with his husband, her Gramps. And it's just so lovely. It made my heart feel full. As I said, the illustrations are exquisite. You could just pore over them for ages. And I think not only is this a really lovely story of acceptance for children, it's a really beautiful book for anyone of any age. Every single page is a work of art. And I can't recommend it enough. I love it. I haven't been able to meet Harry since the pandemic and tell them how much I like it, but it is just fantastic. I love it so much, and I'm so proud of Harry. It is so brilliant. You might have seen in my vlog that I spotted it in Waterstones Piccadilly, and I got so excited that I could see it. It's fantastic. I can't wait to see where Harry goes next. I really think they're destined for fantastic things, and this is such a piece of work to be proud of, and I will read it many, many, many times. Question 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. And aside from Grandad's Camper, which is definitely on there, I had to mention once again the Waterstones exclusive edition of Clara and the Sun by Faber and Faber. I am just obsessed with this. You might remember from previous videos I bought this even though I already own a paperback copy that was an ARC, because I couldn't resist. I mean, look at those sprayed edges. It's one of the most clever book designs I've ever seen. I'm so happy to own it, and I love it, and it's been sat on my shelf. I will probably never read this edition, but I'm very happy that I have it. I actually forgot I've got two more. I'm such a sucker for beautiful books, but I had to mention these ones. So this is a charity shop find. This is The Song of the Seven by Tonke Dracht. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a Dutch name, and I have Dutch ancestors and family members, so I hope I'm saying that right. I feel like I'm not. But this is a hardback, and I just love it. It's got this lovely shiny lettering on it. I love the illustrations. I believe they're by the original author. But I saw this in a charity shop, and I looked it up on Goodreads because it was in the children's section, and I wanted to find out more about it. And it turns out this is a really famous Dutch author. It's had a really high rating on Goodreads. It's got illustrations in it. It sounds really good. About a boy who's kept prisoner in a house full of stairs, who holds the key to a secret. How good does that sound? But also the author, Tonke Dracht, had a weirdly really similar life to a lot of my Dutch ancestors. That she settled in Indonesia, which a lot of Dutch people did at the time, and then she found herself interned in a prisoner of war camp. And that happened to some of my Dutch family. So I was really fascinated when I found out about that, and I cannot wait to get to know the author. She sounds really inspirational. I just can't wait to dig in. I'm trying to save this one. I really hope it's not a disappointment. But yes, I love that cover. And then the third and final beautiful book that I bought. This is one I've had my eye on for ages, and it's been really hard for me to find a copy because this is the American edition, first edition hardback. It's The Diviners by Libba Bray. I just love this copy. Under the Dust Jacket is just beautiful too. I love it. So I first saw this particular edition in a video read by Zoe, who used to be one of my favourite content creators of all time. I loved her videos. She hasn't posted in about a year, which is really sad. She's sort of fallen off the radar, and I really hope she comes back because her videos just made me so happy. but she read this one with her dad and it sounds fantastic. It's got magic in there, it's set in 1920s New York, so you've got flapper girls, you've got the whole American dream feeling, people splashing out, hitting the streets. It's got what sounds like a really good female protagonist in there. And I mean, I just could not resist that cover. So I can't wait to read this one. I think I'm going to listen to the audiobook as well, because it's quite a chunky one. But I can't wait for that one, and I love it, and I'm so happy to have it. And it is literally looking at me from the shelf, telling me to read it. Question 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And this is the one where I need to remind myself that I have work that I need to do. So these are books that I need to read for my degree. Okay, little bit about me. I study media journalism and publishing, and I'm going into my 3rd year. And I had to think of a dissertation or major project idea that would sort of incorporate all of those things. And so at the moment, this might change because I haven't had my feedback yet, but the working title is The Power of the Zine, and I'm looking into zines as a form of anti-establishment publishing, which sounds really interesting. So I've picked out a few books that I want to read as part of that. Let me just get them. Ugh. They're a hefty stack. These are just a few. So the first one is Oh So Pretty, Punk in Print. This is all about, this is a very floppy one, published by Phaidon Press. But this is all about the punk movement and the aesthetic that it had. And if you've watched my How to Get an A Star in Your Art GCSE video, you will know that I am very interested in punk. I think it's fascinating. I love what was done with print media. I love what was done with style, how it shook up the whole world. But this is a very hefty book. We've got loads of great pictures in there, lots of great information. The only issue is I used to have a copy of this and then I sold it and I literally can't find it anywhere. So I've had to get this out of the library and I might have to just keep getting it out on loan. Because the idea of reading something like this cover to cover is quite daunting. I'm no Jack Edwards. I can't just read non-fiction books from start to finish really easily, so I'll need to dip in and out of that one. But I plan to reference the punk movement in zines quite a lot because it's so iconic. I should also mention at this stage I'm planning to do it as a major project where I find out all about zines, how they're made, the materials that are used, what their purpose is, and then at the end I'm going to make my own zine. And I want to try and do it in a really organic way, so actually making it by hand, drawing, printing, but we'll see. I'm very ambitious at the moment. The second one is much slimmer. This is Interviewing for Journalists. It's because as part of my major project I'll be interviewing a few people. One of them is Lou Williams from Girl Zine Fair, who has a brilliant zine business. I've done a workshop with her before and I loved it. So I just wanted to dip into this book. This is a course recommended book, to see if there are any particular ways I can phrase questions to get more interesting answers. But I love talking to people, so I don't think it'll be a problem. But obviously it's her time and she's offering me her time, so I want to make sure that I ask some really good questions. So I'm going to be referencing that one. We then have Notes from Underground, which I think is going to be a key text. This is Zines and the Politics of Alternative Culture by Stephen Duncombe, and it's all words, not a picture in sight. But I think it should be really helpful. This was published quite a long time ago. It's the 20th anniversary edition, which makes me think if it's still in print, it must be okay. So I'm hoping that will be helpful. I'm fully expecting to stick lots of sticky tabs in there. Oh, actually I do spy some pictures. There are pictures, everyone. There are pictures. This is good. I'm a girl who likes a picture. I did think that was a bit weird. For a zine book not to have what? Zine. Not how you say it, Anna. For a zine book not to have any pictures. So yes, excited for that one, although kind of nervous as well. And then we have Comics Unmasked, Art and Anarchy in the UK. This is an exhibition I went to in 2014, I believe, at the British Library. I loved it. It was so interesting. The book is similarly interesting, and it was all about how comics were used to convey anarchistic or anti-zeitgeist messages. And there were a few things about zines in there, but I think it could also have some interesting things about anti-establishment publishing. The exhibition was great. I got a copy of The Young Avengers by Gillen and McKelvey at that exhibition, which is one of my favourite comics of all time, and I fell in love with Kid Loki. Surprise, surprise. But yes, this exhibition was great. I had to order this especially, and you can tell it used to be a library book, but I'm very much looking forward to digging into that one. Very happy that there are many, many, many pictures. I've just seen one of those that I was about to show you was a nude illustration, and I don't want to be anti-monetized. You're not making any money, Anna. But yeah, looking forward to that one. And then I have one fun book that I really want to read by the end of the year, and this is Anne of the Island by L.M. Montgomery. This is the third Anne of Green Gables book. I love Anne of Green Gables. It's one of my favourite books of all time. It's one of the books that shaped me as a person. I just love it. I didn't love the second one. I found that one a little bit tedious. Sorry, Lucy Maud Montgomery. You're a fantastic writer. But I've recently been watching Anne with an E on Netflix, and it is amazing. I love it so much. I literally can't get enough of it. It's making me want to move to Canada and bake currant scones and milk a cow and go round the house with a candlestick. I've actually ordered a candlestick. It wasn't very expensive, and I'm sure it'll be highly dangerous for someone who trips over all the time. So let's pray that my house doesn't burn down. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this one. It's about Anne going to college, I believe. And as a student, even though obviously a very different time period, I'm really looking forward to trying this one. And I think it would be a really good summer read. But I'm saving that for after I finish Anne with an E. Because it's tragically been cancelled, which I think is literally sinful. Not that I'm religious, but why would you do that? Why would you do that? I'm trying not to think about it. I'm saving it for when there's no more Anne with an E. And I've just seen there's a recipe at the beginning. Ooh, for lemon pie. I don't love lemon pie, but maybe this book will get me in the mood. Who knows? Really looking forward to that one. And then the final question is question 14, my favourite book community member. And this is hard because I have a lot of book community members that I love. My two most favourite are probably Ariel Bissett, who is a booktuber who has been here since the dawn of time. She's a Canadian booktuber and I love her videos, and at the moment she's renovating a house in Nova Scotia, I believe. So if you too enjoyed Anne with an E and are craving Canada, watch her videos because she's literally living in like the dream Canadian ancient farmhouse, and I am so here for it. I love it. I also love Noelle Gallagher. Noelle is from the US and she's an English literature MA and an all-round wonderful person. I really love her videos. She's so energetic and so engaging to listen to, and she always has great recommendations as well. I also really like Kira Was a Diver. I've watched her channel right from the start. She lives in Australia and she mainly makes videos about vinyl, but she also does book videos as well, so I love her channel too. But there are so many I could talk about. I really love BookTube. I think it's such a positive place, and I'm really happy that I'm sort of finding a little space to be part of this community on YouTube. I'm loving it. So if you have bookish creators, even if they're not on YouTube, if they're on a different form of social media, let me know in the comments, because I would always love to find more people and I will very happily spend hours watching it. So that's it, you've reached the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, and there are now books on absolutely every surface surrounding me. Please let me know in the comments below what you're reading at the moment, or what you want to read, or if you have any thoughts about the books mentioned. Also, if you're interested in doing the tag yourself, I will put the questions in the comments as well. This comment section's going to be very full. As always, if you enjoyed this video, you can give it a like and you can also hit subscribe, but only if you fancy. I hope you have a lovely week. I hope you read lots of good books, and I'll see you next time. Bye!